Hi, friends. Thank you for tuning in to the Concussion Coach podcast. I'm Bethany Lewis, the Concussion Coach. I'm a neurological occupational therapist and certified life coach, and I specialize in guiding people through their concussion recovery journey. I am passionate about helping people understand their injury, speed up their recovery, and reclaim control over their life post-concussion. The purpose of this podcast is to help increase awareness of concussions and the impact they can have on a person's life, and to bring hope to people who have suffered a concussion and those who love them. I firmly believe that sharing stories and knowledge about concussions will bring important light and understanding to this misunderstood and often invisible injury. The information in this podcast is meant to bring that awareness and hope and is not meant as medical advice. The opinions shared are those of the interviewees and my own. If you are suffering with lingering concussion symptoms, I have created a concussion coaching program specifically for you. I will be your mentor to guide you through your recovery journey, offering help with understanding and managing your symptoms, setting achievable goals, and learning how to manage your own thoughts and nervous system in order to get control over your life again. If this program sounds like something that would help you or someone you love, sign up for a free consultation. In the consultation, you'll get valuable information and resources and gain hope for your future. Sign up for your free consultation at the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Welcome back to the Concussion Coach podcast. Before I introduce my guest today, I just wanted to make sure that you know about the free guide that is available on my website. It is the 5 best ways to support your loved one dealing with a concussion. If you have a friend or a family member who is struggling with post-concussion symptoms, or if you're the one struggling and would like your loved ones to know more about what you're going through and how they can help, head over to my website, theconcussioncoach.com, and download the free guide. Today, my guest is Alyssa Chang. She was recommended to me by a friend who has had quite the concussion recovery journey herself and whose opinion I value highly. She suggested that Alyssa would be a great person to bring on the podcast, and so I'm particularly excited to get to know you, Alyssa. I have heard good things. Alyssa Chang is a neuroscience health coach and the creator of the Regulation Method, a framework designed to help people rewire the patterns behind chronic stress, anxiety, pain, and fatigue. Her work integrates applied neuroscience with a trauma-informed lens, shifting the focus from fixing symptoms to creating safety in the body. Through her teaching, Alyssa helps individuals build self-trust and access lasting change, moving beyond temporary relief towards sustainable nervous system-driven results. Perfect. I really, really love that intro. I'm so excited for this conversation. Thank you so much for being here, Alyssa.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Yeah, so I like so interested to hear your story. Like what do you do and like how you got into it? What was your journey that brought you to doing what you're doing right now?
Yeah, so I actually was an athlete growing up, born and raised in Hawaii and played volleyball basically my entire life. Being around such a performance-based environment for so long, you're definitely passionate about movement. You're passionate about performance. You're passionate about understanding your body. And so I ended up studying kinesiology. We had someone come in and just talk about, personal training and he had offered like time for us to just connect and understand what opportunities we had after college. So I went in to like just kind of like have a conversation. Little did I know it was an interview, and I ended up getting hired. So I started off as just a personal trainer, and then over the years just started to see, the webs of what keeps someone stuck, why things return, like symptoms and pain. And so I ended up having great mentorship with colleagues, got into studying neuroscience through Z Health Education.
Mhm.
Wonderful training system, super intensive. It feels like you're going to like literally like neuroanatomy, like college courses,
Yes.
but how life-changing. And I remember my mentor told me, like, this is the missing link to truly helping your clients get out of pain and helping your clients like stop that like rat race of constantly chasing symptoms. And so I was like, that sounds great. Let's do that.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I got into it. And interestingly enough, at that point in my journey as well, I had this bout where I competed in like figure competitions. So that's in the realm of like bodybuilding,
Okay.
super strict dieting. Um, it's like the no pain, no gain mentality. You're just like punishing your body. And so I trained so intensely for that. And then coming off of that show, I ended up getting so sick. So I ended up having like chronic fatigue, vertigo, brain fog, GI issues, anxiety, depression, binge eating.
Oh my
My
gosh.
body, yeah, it
All of
was
that.
like, yeah, all of that. And it was from just this super strict dieting regimen, the super intense training protocol. You're constantly ignoring your body just because
Mhm.
you're like so focused on like, I got to get this lean and get to the stage. And so it was very, very intense. And at that point, I just had no idea what was going on with my body. So I was trying all the traditional approaches, like, oh, rest and, do brief meditation, manage your stress, and everything just made me worse. And I just kept feeling like, what's wrong with me? Am I defective? And it was through neuroscience that I found like literally the bridge I needed to walk over to finally feel so validated that nothing was wrong with me. My brain was just trying to protect me, and it was doing so with all these symptoms that obviously we don't want: chronic fatigue or anxiety or depression, but it was the best strategy to help me to like truly start to listen to my body. So this whole nervous system work I'm deeply personally tied to. And then with the
Mm.
work I do with clients, it's been profound to see people struggling with these symptoms they've had for years. And by assessing and finding the specific strategies for their brain and body, it's so life changing, and they feel so hopeful and they can re-enter life in a way that I don't even know if they kind of resign to like, I just want to manage my symptoms. And
Hmm.
so having the possibility of like, oh, I can actually go out and take a walk with my kids. I can go play with my kids, it's so powerful.
Yes. Oh, that's
Mhm.
that's amazing. I love that so much. I'm curious, did you have the Z Health training before you did that figure competition, or was it after?
It was honestly like right when I was the most symptomatic. So I was the most compromised. Like yeah, I was the probably unhealthiest version of myself. And so I got into it, and I actually was really questionable of everything because I'm like, how is vision therapy going to help me heal my body? Like how is doing vestibular work really going to help my pain? And so I was,
Mm.
coming from such a model of like traditional health and fitness, right? Where it's like stretch the muscle, like do the foam rolling, and nothing helped. And so
Mm.
I was just at a point where I think it arrived where I like was desperate and so open and willing to trying anything that could help.
Yes. Okay, that's fair. So,
Yeah.
how did you find it? I'm just curious how you came across it. Like, what led you to that
Yeah.
path?
So I was training out of a studio with a mentor, and then he was always just like he's always up to date with all the newest training, methods and
Mhm.
certifications. And he came off of this weekend and he was like, "Hey, you should look at this." And I was like, "Okay, it's a lot of money and like that I have to fly somewhere, this whole thing." And I was already like struggling with being seen in my body because I was going through like big shifts with like how I felt. Like I had so much inflammation, I had a lot of anxiety. So to think about like getting on a plane and then having to
Mm.
like change up my routine felt so overwhelming. But he was very convincing. And I think just the thought that this could truly change so many people's lives. And, we talked about like, you talk with your colleagues about like, oh, I have this client and I've been trying to do this and this isn't working, and just to know that there was potentially this other approach or system that could help you make sense of all these like
Mm.
mysterious symptoms was like so cool to think about.
Yes, that's amazing. So you did the Z Health training,
hmm
um, and then how did that play out from there? Because did you already have your own clients and stuff as doing personal training stuff? Yeah, keep going.
Yeah,
Let's hear.
yeah, yeah. So I was training privately, and it's so interesting, right? Because you come off of these weekends and it shifts your paradigm. Like you're thinking muscle attachments, like tight muscles
Mhm.
mean this. Then you're like, okay, so your eyes are controlling your tight muscles, and then your breath is also playing a role in your anxiety, and the
Yes.
web is just wide. And so they do a really good job though of like giving you like a Monday morning protocol where it's like, okay, I know we just like shifted and your entire perspective on how to help people get out of pain and address their
Mhm.
symptoms. Here's where you start. And so it was like, just get back to like assessing their gait, look at how their eyes are moving. And then with that, start to bring in these what we call like high payoff drills. So you
Mhm.
bring in very slowly these drills. And I just think back to the clients I had then, and I'm just so grateful that we had built enough rapport, right? At that point that I was having them stare at like a string, like Brock string, right? Beads
Uh-huh.
on a string. And that they just trusted me and they went with it. And so I think I was fortunate from that standpoint that I had such a trusting clientele base. And yeah, they were willing to trust and experiment. and I had them to experiment because I think a lot of
Hmm.
people come off of these certifications and if they're, building their practice, you need the practice of watching bodies, of watching eyes, and I was just so
Hmm.
fortunate that I had that at that time to really experiment.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
a happy thing for everybody
Yes.
involved. And did you notice a difference in how your different approaches affected your clients?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it was like that first week. I had this client, and he was in a really bad bike accident. Definitely had post-concussion symptoms. And, I'd been working with him not too long. Maybe it was like a few months at that point. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to try the sea health stuff with him. So, assessed his eyes, watched his gait, did a simple joint mobility drill, moved his eyes. And when I reassessed his gait, when he walked away from me and then he turned and he started smiling and he's walking back towards me. And I was like, oh, how are you doing? And how's that feeling? And he's like, that's how I felt before my accident. And I
Oh.
remember getting like flooded with goosebumps, and I was like, hold it together, Alyssa, don't cry. It's just those moments where, like, this is how fast this work can work when
Mhm.
you know what to do specifically for the client in front of you.
Mhm.
And at that point, I was still kind of like using the framework they gave me, but it was still so powerful to know that, like, it's just about giving the brain the right type of input that it's been searching for to really start to shift someone's state. And so I ended up having multiple experiences like that within the first week. So I was so bought in. The funny part though is that my personal body was actually way more resistant to the drills. So I
Oh,
would do,
interesting.
yeah. So I was just like, okay, just keep going with it because it's helping your clients. But I would do like the vision drills and I would just have these weird responses where like parts of my visual field, which was information, I mean, parts of my visual field would get a little darker. I wasn't reassessing any better, really. Everything kind of came back neutral. And so again, I was just follow your gut. Like clearly this stuff works. There's enough science to support it. You're seeing it with your clients, but it took my nervous system and I was so compromised at that point, like my metabolism, I needed way more breathing rehab. To have the drills actually support me. I think
Mm.
they were almost too much, even though they're seemingly so simple. It was just taxing my own nervous system. So I was constantly getting like neutral or poor results after I was doing all the drills.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Were you just doing it on yourself, or were you working with somebody who was trained in this as well?
I was doing a lot of it on my own, and then I had a few friends that we, traveled together, and so we would kind of meet up and then talk about it. So it was helpful when, we had those opportunities, and they could actually assess me and take me through a few things. And it was
Hmm.
more so just like, hey, I think this is like important that you continue to do because of my responses, because I wasn't
Hmm.
responding in the way that like the information is A plus B should equal C, but I was getting like the reverse response. So it was like, okay,
Hmm.
how do we get creative and like have a different entry point for me with the vision therapy? And a lot of that had to be like vision needed to be paused. I had to start with a different starting point.
Hmm. And how long did it end up taking for you to find the healing you were hoping for? Just
Yeah,
curious.
it took a while. I mean, I think at that point I had gone through uh 3 weekend long, like they're like 4 day long, 8 hour trainings, right? And you have this prep that you do before. So it was months. And I was pretty diligent about, doing it with my clients and then integrating it with my own when I could. But it wasn't until I took a course that really focused on sustenance. So a lot of nutrition,
Mm.
that really helped me better understand, again, the state of my metabolism and how compromised I was, that the brain, when it's trying to heal, needs oxygen, it needs glucose. And I was just constantly exhausting those reserves. So my
Mm.
brain wasn't actually able to keep up with the new input and create that plastic change. So
Oh, that's
as I started,
interesting.
yeah, so with a lot of post concussion, the brain is just always funneling through so many calories. And so
Hmm.
really looking at like, okay, I am running a marathon by 10 a.m., right? And so I need to make sure I'm on top of my hydration, I'm on top of my food, so that
Hmm.
when I decide to move my body, or have the time to, right, that like I'm able to pull from actual energy versus like just further depleting my body. And I think I see this a lot with my clients is
Mm.
It's maybe not that the tool isn't right for them. It's like, is their body in a place to receive that input and then, right, rewire itself?
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a that's a really good point. And that like foundational things. It's funny because I feel like we're talking about foundational things. Nervous system is the
Yeah.
foundation. But in order to support that nervous system, that the hydration and the nutrition matters. I would love to hear any, we'll take a little side tangent here on nutrition for a sec.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind sharing some of the things that you've found especially helpful for people with post-concussion symptoms. To what would your general recommendations be for how to best fuel their body?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, what's really interesting is, part of my demographic is also exiting like this realm of diet culture where like
Mm,
they're having to unlearn that carbs are not bad, right? They're having to unlearn that, you know, in a healing process where you're trying to even just manage your symptoms, get out of pain, your brain requires calories. And so it's this balance of like the emotional journey they're on of trying to understand that food is fuel, food does help them function better, with
mm,
also just this very rooted science reason that your brain heavily relies on glucose. And so if all of our, executive functioning comes from our prefrontal cortex, and the prefrontal cortex, it uses 25% more glucose than the rest of the brain. So if ever you're getting foggy, you get hangry, right? It's
mm,
like, oh, okay, we might not actually just have enough fuel. It's not a personality thing, right? It's like, oh, we
right.
just ran out of fuel. And with post concussion, you're just going to burn through that so fast.
Mm,
So it's understanding that science part. It's really validating that like, this journey will look however it needs to look depending on what emotional state this client is in. So just be gentle, I think, with the added, calories, especially if there's like a dieting history.
mm.
Um,
That's a good point.
but really, it's like, I mean, I'm a big fan of adrenal mocktails, I call them. I think you can research it. It's adrenal cocktails. But it's a combination of orange juice for the vitamin C, cream of tartar has potassium. You put a pinch of sea salt. And then you can either put like coconut milk if you're sensitive to lactose or dairy, but something that has a little bit of fat. And then you can put like collagen peptides or some sort of like, gelatin bone broth powder. You mix that all together, ideally unflavored bone broth powder.
Yes.
Um, and then it's this perfect concoction that is so hydrating. It's so stabilizing for your blood sugar levels. So for me, I was again extremely compromised, but I was also still seeing clients like back to back to back. And maybe our breaks were like, 5 minutes in between transitioning from clients. So I relied heavily on these mocktails to bring in sustenance, to bring in calories. And then I, really was intentional about consuming like fruits. Coconut water was a big staple for myself. But we really want to focus on if your brain relies on glucose, which is a simple carbohydrate, that is something that's going to be so essential and valuable to help you be in a symptom management phase while you're still working on trying to, understand your symptoms, get out of pain, things like
Mm.
that.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. That's really cool. This isn't something that I've had anybody share before, so I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
Something
I
new and
have the
interesting.
recipe too that we can definitely post on the
Oh,
show notes and stuff.
perfect.
Yeah,
Yay,
yeah.
perfect. Thank you. I would love that. And I'm totally intrigued. I want to try it myself. So
Yeah.
we'll
It's
be
like an
that
orange dreamsicle, like the yeah,
perfect. I love
there
those.
yeah, it's funny because I was like, "Oh, this is delicious." And then I have had clients that are like, "Alyssa, that's disgusting." And so there's other options where you can do like what like you just blend like juice. You do put like a little bit of the salts, and things like that to
Mhm.
help, but it doesn't always have to look this version.
That's so funny. Yes, I people have different tastes, but yeah, no,
Yes,
that's
yes.
awesome. Thank you. So what it sounds like you do work with people who have PCS, post-concussion syndrome, but what do you like? uh, who else do you work with? And I would be curious to hear the commonalities, or like, yeah, things that you notice between the different types of like groupings of people that you're working with. I don't know if that even makes any sense, but
Yeah.
take it however you will. Just tell us
Yeah,
about who you work
yeah.
with.
I would say the people that are most drawn to like my approach typically have exhausted a lot of traditional approaches to understanding their body, getting to the root cause of their symptoms. They're pretty defeated by the time they reach me, though. And that can be a result of they've been researching, reading, listening to the podcast, seeing multiple specialists, and maybe they've had temporary relief, but then their symptoms come back.
Mm.
So I do tend to meet them in a space where, emotionally there's like, I hope you can help, but I'm a little cautious. And a lot of that symptom physical wise is like you know, anxiety came from maybe a chronic pain symptom or vice versa. So there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of chronic pain, there's pain that just hops around their body, chronic fatigue. And with PCS, I think we have things like brain fog. I've had a lot of long COVID clients as well, which,
Mm.
interestingly enough, long COVID and PCS are in their health history. It's like, ooh, this is like,
Very similar.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're looking at, okay, all this cognitive functioning things that have been impacted as a result of what you've just been through. So they're definitely emotionally in a exhausted place, but hopeful, and they're very curious about the nervous system. So as they start to learn about the brain, I mean, you can just see the weight of judgment or like, I'm defective, what's wrong with me, start to like roll off their shoulders when I'm like, oh no, like your prefrontal cortex is houses motivation. Like, this is why you feel like you can't get out of bed. Like you have this
Yes.
in your health history. This is what your breathing looks like. This is how your eyes move. If we get all these things to come back online in the way that like they're supposed to function, you're probably going to roll out of bed and be like, a walk sounds nice today, And that's so overlooked because it's like so many people that don't have PCS, like we're driving, we're like making breakfast, but the spoon theory, right? With people with
Mm.
PCS, it's like, how many do I have at this point? And so really being cognizant of like, how do we set you to be as resource as possible by getting function, like different areas of your brain to truly get better integration so that they can do their jobs.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes. Amen to that. And I love that point that you make about it's not a moral judgment of you. It doesn't mean you're just lazy all of a sudden because you don't feel like going on a walk. It is exactly
Yeah.
it's how resourced are you? How's your nervous system attending to everything that's going on and reacting to all of that? It really I think that emotional component and self-worth, self-love, like all of that is just it's also intertwined. Um,
Yeah.
and I appreciate you bringing that up. And that yeah, if we can bring it and show people like, no, this isn't saying anything about you as a person and who you are. This is like your body's response to what's going on. It
Hmm.
really can take some of that weight of judgment away, which is important and beautiful.
Hmm.
And for those listening who are not familiar with spoon theory, it's when Alyssa was talking about that, it's just this concept of having like a spoonful of energy, like how much energy and how many spoons do you have available to you? It's kind of a measurement of what your energy is like and helps with pacing. So just wanted to throw that out there in case people weren't familiar with that. Um, but I love that. Okay, so thank you for that. I am fascinated in hearing more about your regulation method journey that you have put together. And I'm guessing this is your spin on what you learned from Z Health. How did it come about and tell us about it?
Yeah, I think from like a business standpoint, it's like, how do I help like an incoming potential client understand like, they could be caught in this web of symptoms with no starting next step. This means this, and then this is how I exit. So it was like,
Mm,
how do I help someone who is in that place see that there's a pattern, right? And there's like this step-by-step process. So it came really from like organizing that. And it's really like how I take every client through this process to get them to the place of relief and like sustainable progress too. So the first stage is really just like helping them understand the role of the brain in what's happening in their body. Remove that shame, remove the blame, remove the judgment as soon as possible. Help them understand it's not you, it's your brain. And your brain does all these things. And we have strategies that really can help your brain start to function in the way that it's supposed to do its job. So, a lot of that first phase is like developing the awareness around why we start with the nervous system, why it's important, why it's plastic, so why not, right? We can actually change who we are, rewire patterns, and then helping them understand themselves in the process. I think a lot of times when someone is trying to understand their body and themselves, we can often forget that they're a person, right? They come with lived experiences. They come with, like I talked about, like dieting culture, like what is their relationship with food and how does that factor into this bigger picture of them understanding their PCS symptoms, understanding their chronic fatigue.
Mm.
So it's this phase where I really want to hold all the pieces and create an immense amount of validation through science. I think that helps us move into compassion from a more embodied place versus like, I know I should be kind to myself, but it's so hard to do it. It's like, oh, I can
Yes.
feel that if I am being patient, if I am, giving myself the benefit of the doubt, like progress is inevitable.
Mm.
After we develop that stage of like awareness, we move into like a lot of assessments. We talked about earlier, just, assessing gait, assessing vision, assessing breath. I assess balance for the vestibular system. We assess different parts of the brain, like your cerebellum. So all these assessments paint the picture of basically me quickly understanding like, oh, this person's hands moving like that and their toes doing this and gait, that tells me that this part of their brain is under functioning. So probably in their health history, I'm going to see X, Y, and Z, which, it's so interesting to see like how health history is like such a snapshot, but when you see movement, you're like, it puts the two pieces together. So it's kind of like this
Mm-hmm.
validating resource.
That's awesome.
Um, yeah, so the assessment is so informative. I mean, the way you move tells me so much about what's going on. We can watch someone do like a balance assessment, and for me, it's like, oh, okay, they probably are someone that's anxious and doesn't want to move their body. If they're wiggling in a balance assessment, their brain is so worried about falling down, their motivation to move their body is obviously going to be very low.
Mm.
Um, After the assessments, that's where we start to implement the practical brain-based strategies. I'm a huge fan of like giving my clients immediate like implementation tools
Yes.
um, as soon as we can. And so it's identifying like similar to the client who had that bike accident, watching him walk and like at that point, even early on in my journey, I was like, oh, this looks like he probably needs this mobility drill,
Mm.
inserting that, then immediately reassessing, like the brain will give you information right away. So bringing in those tools that are specific based off of the assessment. And then that way we're like, guessing far less, right? Not throwing random darts. We're like, okay, you
Yes.
moved like this. Here's the drill. Let's reassess. What is your body showing us? And then the last stage of this regulation method is like really building a plan together. I'm huge on collaboration. I feel like my clients will always tell me so much more about their body because they're in it every day. They've been in it longer than I've, met them in initial consultation. So super collaborative. We build it based off of like what I've learned, what I see, how they're responding. And then also like what does their week look like? Are they a mom? Are they, solo parenting for half of the week? Do they work at a desk? Are they, someone that doesn't like to cook? So factoring all those pieces to really build a week plan. Ideally, I meet with my clients ideally weekly. That helps them feel like they can do it. And I think when
Mm.
you're stuck in these symptoms, you don't know where to start. I think every first step feels so overwhelming. And if we can break it down where like the first step feels so actionable, feels so realistic, like again, progress is going to be inevitable because the brain rewires based off of like consistent, repeated interventions. And
Mm.
so bringing that in a digestible way, like that's the last step is like, let's just integrate, let's build out these plans.
Beautiful. I love it so, so much. And do people need to be in person with you? Do you do online?
No, I do online. So actually at this point, I have about like 60% in person and 40% online, which is,
Mhm.
the pandemic, pre-pandemic, I was actually starting to shift my business online because I was living in California at the time, wanted to move home. And so with the pandemic, I just shifted everything online, moved back to Hawaii. I now have a private studio here in Hawaii. So that's been really awesome to just have like that space, because in
Mm.
person, there's just different things you can see.
Yeah.
But online, it's awesome to be helping someone like in the East Coast, international, like learn about their brain,
Yeah.
and it's the power of this work is like you can still see a lot through Zoom,
Yes,
So
yes, yes. That's very cool. Yeah, I agree. I feel the same way. Like in person, there's things that are just much. I really prefer in person when I'm doing OT stuff, but Zoom is it makes it doable. And I have to tell myself sometimes like even if it's not the most ideal like highest level, it's better than nothing. So
yes.
and you can still see really good things happen from it. So
Yeah.
that's yeah, that's kind of my take on that as well. But very, very cool. And which island are you on?
I'm on Oahu.
Okay, cool. Very cool. Um, so if well, I there was a post that you had,
Mm,
which we will link to your social media and stuff in the show notes. But one of your posts talked about how you helped a client move beyond daily Advil, and he was in
mm.
like chronic pain. I would love if you wouldn't mind to have you share that experience or like how you helped him and why it was helpful, like why it made a difference.
Yeah, I think, part of the regulation method is let's understand what pain really is. And I think that part of this journey to, not having Advil is if we're constantly blunting this pain signal, it's always going to come back. Your brain is hardwired to keep you safe, it's hardwired to keep you alive, and it communicates via our symptoms to grab our attention. And pain being the loudest input system that, or output system, I should say, that literally halts us, right? Because if we have a headache, we're probably going to shut our computer. We're probably going to stand up, get some water, use the bathroom. We have a behavior change that quickly follows a pain
Hmm.
symptom. And so for this client, it was like, hey, let's get curious first as to like what's going on when you are getting headaches, right? And we identified going backwards that like, oh yeah, it could be linked to like sleep. It could be linked to like being on his computer for these many hours, maybe tense relational things that are going on. So what are all these, we call it threats in the nervous system world. Threats are just neurological words for stress. Similar to the spoon theory, as we talked about, we emphasize the threat bucket theory, where every day
Hmm.
we each start off with like an empty bucket, but throughout the day it fills up with different threats. And so with PCS, your bucket maybe starts already like halfway full. Whereas someone who doesn't, it's a little emptier. We all have our lived experiences and like injuries and surgeries we've been through, so that's all in the bucket. But as we go through the day, this bucket's filling. And so for him and I was getting curious around like, okay, what's actually filling your bucket and how do we get ahead of those threats before your bucket overflows and your brain is giving you the headaches and the tension and all of that. So we spent a lot of time getting curious around that. Then after doing the assessments, it was, very apparent that like, oh yeah, there's like light sensitivity, there's like strained eyes, different breathing rates. And so then the intervention of like, okay, how can we, reduce light input? I'm a big fan of like colored lenses, pinhole glasses, things like that to help just reduce the amount of stimulation someone's brain is having a hard time processing. So pinhole glasses are literally glasses with like little holes in them. And it basically inhibits a part of the brain called the mesencephalon, which is your midbrain. And then that automatically helps like you downshift from being in such a sympathetic state. It reduces the amount of light hitting your eyes. And so someone putting those on could immediately feel like less tension in their head. So it was really understanding like how much input he was getting that was putting his nervous system in a very heavy threat bucket zone. And then his brain was communicating the headaches. So that's a big part of this work is like, what is your brain understanding as a super threatening experience that couldn't be threatening, right? Like, but your brain is detecting like the overhead lights as like big tigers trying to scare you, right? And so it's
Hmm.
like, how do we, first off, I think, understand what those are, reduce the input, but then inoculate your brain from the stress, from the threat. So, how do we get your eyes to work better, perceive light as not a tiger? And that's a lot through the rehab, right? The drills that we can
Hmm.
integrate, the breath work we can do, the food he might need to eat. And so,
Hmm.
through all of that work over the course of working together, it was just awesome to see that he could be with his pain in a curious way, intervene with drills and get ahead of all the escalation of his symptoms. And then now it's just part of his daily life where he's constantly, turning towards his drills instead of, right, popping the Advil. And again, I'm a fan of Advil if and when it's definitely the case.
Hmm.
But for, this person, it was really apparent that he was seeking a more sustainable, like, let me learn about my nervous system and body.
Yes, yes. I think that's so fantastic. And yes, I remember I did some of the Z Health trainings and I that the training specifically about pain, Dr. Cobb like blew my mind. I was like the bucket thing. I was like, wait a minute, this I never thought of it that way and never knew. Yeah, I had never seen it that way, and it was just very eye-opening and really, really cool. And it can change your relationship to pain, that it's information and
Mhm.
your body trying to create certain behaviors to reduce the threat inputs. It is very cool and
Mhm.
can be life-changing. So I really appreciate you explaining all of that and really cool to hear the success for your client there. Yeah, because pain is something that a lot of people deal with, and especially our PCS friends, friends who are
Mhm.
dealing with the post-concussion stuff. Um, Yeah, really makes a difference. So I would love to have you share, if you wouldn't mind, some of the regulation strategies that you find are kind of help a lot of people, if like something that our listeners could try today to try to see if it could help them calm their nervous system down a little bit.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, hmm, I think the two biggest things I often recommend right off the bat is like because your eyes are your brain's chosen sensory input system, it's like how do we move our eyes, rest our eyes? And so I like simple drills like palming.
Mm,
Palming is, you rub your hands together for about 10 seconds, close your eyes, stack one hand over the other. So you're basically trying to cut out all light from entering your eyes. As you sit or lie there, all you want to do is take really intentional breaths. Maybe you can think about inhaling through the nose for, let's say, like 3 seconds. You can pause at the top for a couple seconds. Exhale maybe a smidge longer, closer to five. Pause at the bottom for two, and then just kind of cycle through that. Because your eyes, again, are just taking in so much of your environment. I think statistically it's like 70-90% of your environment. When they are overworked and with someone PCS, right, there is a hypersensitivity to light, to like tracking, moving, like people, cars, like you just get so overstimulated so quickly that
mm,
reducing the input is such a regulating tool that sounds so simple, but it's so profound. Like you cut out light for someone, put on sunglasses, you just have them cover their eyes. It's incredible how different they feel. So again, when we were talking about like it's not a you problem, it's not a personality thing, it's literally your brain gets to a place of overstimulation that of course you're going to be less patient, right? Of course you're going to feel more moody and like snap and all these personality things that then, after the fact you feel so frustrated with yourself about, but it's really such an indicator that like, ooh, I think you're just overstimulated and overwhelmed. Let's take care of your brain first, and then you can re-enter like this, dinner party or something. So I
yes.
love sensory reduction. Like palming is such a great tool. You can hang out there, like clients like to hang out there for like 5 breaths or so.
Mm,
And then, you know, if we're not reducing sensory, then it's like moving your eyes. And sometimes I just have clients like look out their window and like trace objects in the distance with their eyes. Like imagine that you were like sketching like a tree, but instead with your hand, you're using your eyes and you're just kind of softly gazing in the distance, moving your eyes around a tree.
mm,
Super simple strategies that you can do. And you'll feel when you just gaze into the distance, like how that already shifts you. You might notice you yawn, you might notice you're breathing, you might notice you have to use a bathroom. So it's just these like very gentle interruptions to like autopiloting or like being in work mode or being disconnected from the body that can just make that super gentle transition back into like, oh, I have a body. I am in a
mm,
body. What do I need?
mm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm the gazing off into the distance. Do you feel like that is, I'm trying to picture if that engages the peripheral vision as well. Because I know that engaging peripheral vision can also be relaxing to it. But yeah, I don't know. That is cool. I'm gonna have to try that one.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, because for PCS too, right, there's that distance, like convergence is really one of the hardest things for people
mhm.
struggling with PCS. And convergence is just like basically making your eyes go cross-eyed because there's this zone where both eyes are actually crossing over and having to understand the information in front of them together. But
Mm,
most PCS like clients have the challenge of like both eyes understanding and moving well together.
yes.
And that integration point can be really stressful. So gazing into the distance, usually though, I'll see clients exhale because they're like,
Mm.
oh my God, it's not stressful out here. And so
Yes.
bringing in their periphery obviously is going to also be such a regulating tool.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. Yes, that's very cool. Thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate it. So I would love to hear your thoughts on when you're working with somebody and they feel like they've had a setback. They've been making progress and all of a sudden it's 5, 10 steps backwards. That can be so frustrating and feel very defeating. What do you say to them? How can people tap into hope throughout their journey here?
Yeah, I mean, first off, setbacks are like really hard. So your response makes absolute sense, right? You're totally okay to feel frustrated, disappointed. upset, confused. I think I want to just first validate that like no one likes setbacks, right? We just want that
Right.
linear road to healing. So
Yes, we
you're
do.
incredibly validated. But one of the biggest shifts is understanding that a setback doesn't mean that you've lost progress. It usually means that your nervous system got overwhelmed and it went back to a familiar pattern. And so your brain loves familiarity. It
Mm,
thrives off of prediction. So, sometimes when we have a setback, what your brain is seeking is comfort. And so it'll go back to escalating these symptoms that maybe you haven't had for a while. So it's giving you the brain fog again, it's giving you the head tension, it's giving you the anxiety. I think setbacks are really interesting points of reassessments of like, ooh, okay, we found a different edge for you. And then that helps us better strategize how we program, right? Because if, I had you do a bunch of convergence drills, what we were talking about, and then it set off your symptoms and it feels like a setback, it's like, ooh, okay, we now understand that maybe instead of like 5 reps of convergence, we actually need one. Then we need to do distance gazing, a breathing drill. Then let's do one more, and that's it. So it's
mm,
actually a really interesting point of from a logistical side of like, ooh, we can restructure this better. Um, and I think my demographic tends to blame themselves. So I always suggest that instead of asking like, what did I do wrong? I do encourage them to ask like, what might my system need right now to feel safer? And so if we can establish safety fast, what ends up happening is a setback instead of it feeling like months, it's just like a couple days. We put in the resources, right? We take the adrenal cocktail, we breathe, we reduce light, like your window of recovery starts to shorten much faster. And that's like the beauty of really doing this healing work is you develop resiliency, you develop the
mm,
trust in yourself that like setbacks happen and I can recover in a couple days. Um, yeah, and I think the hope part, hope usually doesn't come from like these big transformations or leaps. It really comes from those like repeated small moments where your system experiences like something different, but that's also safe.
mm,
So I always say that like even the tiniest shifts of like when I look into the distance, like I can feel my body exhale. Like that's your brain communicating to you that like I really like that. That's really safe and that's so hopeful because just a second ago, right, you were like having head tension and you were overwhelmed and you were like really impatient. And so the fact that we can have like literally this dial on our body and brain to like change it immediately, it's like so hopeful and so reassuring that like you're truly not stuck. Like there are things that happen multiple times a day where your brain and body are constantly communicating to you. And if we're in our body, like we can experience those subtle shifts.
mm, mm. Yes, thank you. That's so beautifully said. And um, yeah, it really is. I love that kind of reframe of the question of like, what did I do wrong? How did this happen? To what does my system need right now? And like, how can I
Mm-hmm.
support it in this moment? And I think, yeah, you can like look back, like you said, kind of analyze maybe what is that new edge that we've found. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's very helpful both on like a practical side as well as the cognitive side or like the mental emotional side of things. So thank you for
Mm-hmm.
sharing that. Um, I would also love to hear what advice you give to or have for caregivers, loved ones, family members, people who are trying to best support somebody who's dealing with PCS and chronic issues like this. What do you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is such a team effort, right? It's like it's really hard to witness someone you care so deeply about struggling and like to some degree feeling relatively helpless, right? Like you can definitely step in and like take more of the load of like laundry and cooking and things like that. But I will say that one of the most helpful things is to really understand that what they're experiencing is real, even if it doesn't look like, even if it's not visible, right?
Mm,
Like they may be stuck in like such a state of their nervous system where pain is consuming their body experience that they can't respond to a question that you asked. They can't help make a decision of what to do for dinner. But it doesn't mean that they don't care. It doesn't mean that they're not trying. That doesn't mean that they want to be in this state of like indecision. So it can appear visible. So I think the best thing to do is like, as much as possible, like stay curious. So sometimes, when it comes to this curiosity, it's like really developing a lot of check ins with this partner. Like, what are you noticing
Mm.
right now? What would feel supportive for you? And maybe instead of like what would feel supportive for you, it's like giving them A or B options, right? Would it feel supportive for me to like lay here with you? Or do you need some time alone? Right? Like you don't need like another person in your space. You just need like time to rest and decompress. And so it really comes down to just getting curious about like their capacity and understanding that some days will look really different than others. And I think at the bottom line, like they are trying and they don't want to be like this. And I think that's what's so hard about this recovery journey is that it takes patience on so many fronts, because the brain can only heal as fast as like it feels it is safe. And sometimes
Mhm.
that safe patient process looks like we do one convergence drill for the week, And so as the support team, it's patient. You have to be patient as well, but everyone needs their time to decompress. So make sure you're taking care of yourself too. This person
Mhm.
is still in there. They're just really going through a big transition. And I extend so much understanding to the entire team and the person going through this because it's a journey. It's a journey for sure.
It is, and it like you said, it's a team effort. It really it
Yeah.
impacts everybody. It's not just a one person kind of deal. And I like that you pointed out to the possibly suggesting to give A/B options, because it's hard to
Yes.
come up with like a open-ended questions can be very challenging sometimes. And so people are like, I don't even know what I need. Don't ask me that, right?
Yeah,
Um,
totally. And I think that could be really triggering when they're trying to figure out what it is that they need, right? Do
yeah.
I need to lay down or should I do a breathing drill? Do I just need food or is it just a bad day for me? And it's like, oh my God, like to be stuck
It's
in that space. Yeah.
Yes, and exactly, like all of those things are so real, and it can be so challenging even when you know like there are like what good options could be, like how do I know which one? And I think sometimes there isn't a right answer. It's just let's try something and see how it goes.
Yes.
But and I like too the options that you gave when you were giving that example of like, do you want me to be here with you or do you want me to do you need some space? I think it's important to recognize like it may be different depending on the day, depending on the time of day, like that. They might want one thing one time and another thing another time. So it's really great to give them those options and be understanding yourself of like, okay, I'm happy to do
Yeah.
either one. So
Yeah. And,
yeah,
and then I think, going back to what we were talking about, like the spoon theory or threat bucket, even using that language, like how many spoons do you have left? How full is your threat bucket? Because if your
yes.
partner is like, I am overflowing, then you're like, okay, take some time. Like, I'll figure out dinner. Let me
Hmm.
do the dishes, whatever it is, right? Like you rest and decompress. It makes it less personal when it's just like, I don't have any spoons left, that you
Yes.
can automatically understand your role. And I think
Yes.
depending on what role you are in the partnership or relationship or team, if you are someone that desires to help, if you're someone that desires to like, provide, you you will yourself will get activated because you may not know. But if it's objective where it's like, I have no spoons, my bucket's overflowing, it's like, great. There's already a list of things that your brain's like, cool, I'm gonna do all these things
Yes,
now.
yes, yes. And I love that you're bringing this up. It is so helpful to have a like standardized, like
Yes.
whatever system works as far whether it's spoons or buckets or battery power,
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like if you have, and it's helpful to have that conversation ahead of time, like when people are not fully activated and triggered or having a hard time in the moment. Like, okay, let's talk about this. When you're at this, what does that mean, and what can I do to support you? And like have that discussion so that yeah, it's more obvious like when they tell you that it's kind of it takes away the effort of
Yes.
having to come up with all of the descriptive words and just say this is what I'm at and
Yeah,
everybody
and
knows
I
what that
I
means.
will say I worked with another client. It was actually right. It was more around her PMDD window, so getting really symptomatic closer to her cycle. And when she's not in that symptom window, that's when we're building out her plan. It's like, okay, what do we know your nervous system needs? Okay, heavy weight on your body. You want your partner to comfort you. These are the things that he can say and do, and all these things. And so we implemented this whole plan when she wasn't in her symptom and then shared it with her partner. They reviewed it again, not in her symptom window. That
Yes.
then when they did it, she he was saying how he's like, I don't know if it feels authentic because I'm just reading it, like you're like, I'm right here with you, like your pain is real, like all these things, right? And she and she was just like, no, like you could be reading off a script, it still is nice to hear. So
That's awesome.
but we have this whole strategy plan, right? And I think the more you can get ahead of it on these days that are naturally going to show up, the better it
Mm.
sets both of you up to be very successful in like mitigating any added threats, any spoons
Mhm.
being taken away, that it's just going to bring you closer together as you move through the ups and downs of like recovery.
Yes, yes. I love that. I love that story. And it just, I think it shows too that like that co-regulation piece, like having somebody who's on your side, who you're figuring this out together, like it makes a difference. And so, yeah, if
Yeah.
you're the one, if you're the loved one listening, just know that you matter. It
Oh my
really,
God, you
really,
matter
really matters.
so much because when you think about like when you ask the demographic that arrives to me, more often than not, they feel so alone
Yeah.
because they are alone in their thoughts and in their body, and the body that they feel is so not normal. And so, you know, feeling alone only creates more activation in the nervous system. So your presence, you even not saying anything, but sitting with them on a bad day,
Yes.
like
Yes.
send so many powerful messages of like you are safe to be in the symptom like state, and that I'm not leaving, I'm right
Mm.
here. And the nervous system can leverage your nervous system's regulation and create that internal response of like, oh, my breath is slowing down, I'm not alone because literally he or she is sitting right here,
Mm.
so it's just so powerful. Co-regulation is so powerful.
Yes, yes, yes. Amen. Thank you. That's so good. Man, this has been such a good conversation. I feel like we've covered so many important pieces of PCS and what it shows up like and things that can be helpful for it. I just really appreciate everything. Is there anything else that we didn't cover or that you want to make sure gets said in relation to helping people understand their nervous systems and healing from a concussion?
Oh, I think, the big thing is that your symptoms like are not random in many cases. They're really signs and signals from your body that's, really at the end of the day trying to protect you. And so the same nervous system that created those symptoms is also the same nervous system capable of changing them. That's the power of like
Yes.
neuroplasticity. It's like so awesome to know that like we literally can rewire ourselves. And I think the big thing with PCS is like there's a lot of grief that comes with recognizing the state of what your capacity looks like. And so be so gentle with yourself. Like there's going to be a lot of erasers, right? Kind of like erasing expectations of the day, erasing that expectation of last week. And, I think that comes with a lot of grief, and holding grief alongside healing the body is such a complex human
Mm.
experience, and it can feel very isolating and lonely. So have that team of support. Um, and in many cases, I'll just say this, that like it doesn't come down to you doing more. In often cases, it's like doing less and doing more of the right thing. So yeah, just keep in mind that like the things that you could do before don't always necessarily equate to like what is necessary now. And like sometimes those days where you are just like chilling out and like you're delegating tasks, like you might feel so much more mentally clear. You might have less fatigue and you might have less pain. And it's not going to stay that way forever as long as you're consistent. Again, the brain rewires with consistent, repeated exposure to these different interventions like vision therapy and breath.
Mm. Yes. Can I get a big amen for everything you just said? It's really, you touch on so many important things. I just want to like point out a couple of things too. Um, that it's not forever. I think that is very helpful, especially on those like setback days where you feel like you've taken a few steps back. It is not forever. So just remember that if you're in one.
Hmm.
And yes, the point of it's not necessarily doing more. And I think I would tell people this all the time that we we want to know what to do to get better. And there are a lot of things that you can do, but one of those things, a very big thing of that you can do is to not do. Is to like and rest feels like not doing. It feels like it's, I don't know, a cop out or something. I don't know, but it is like really what creates that space for what you do to take root and grow. So I think I appreciate you bringing that point out. And the whole grief aspect. There's that's real and that's a significant part of when people are dealing with this kind of thing. So appreciate you bringing that up. Actually did a podcast episode on grief specifically and with
Mm,
concussion. So I'll try to link that in the show notes
yeah.
as well because um yeah, it's real. And
Yeah.
then the piece about the symptoms were created by the same system that's going to be able to protect you and create the opposite. I just think that it is so cool. Like the neuroplasticity is amazing. I remember there was I don't know if you've read, there's a couple books by Norman Doidge, The
Hmm.
Brain's Way of Healing, The Brain That Changes Itself. And when I read that, I was like listening to it on my drives to and from work, and I would just like come home and just like burst through the door and be like, the brain is amazing. I got so excited about it. It really is astounding. So,
Yes.
yes,
Great,
amen.
great
Thanks.
reads to definitely build that hope as we named earlier. Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. And we can, yeah, link those in the show notes as well. But I just so appreciate all of this, everything that you've shared, everything that you're doing. It just really like resonates and rings very true. Like this is these are the things that make the difference and that can help. And I can tell that you are a good co-regulator with your clients. I'm sure that they get a lot from just being with you, and your knowledge and understanding of all of this. So thank you so much for sharing this. How can people learn more from you and get in touch with you if they want to?
Yeah, well, first off, let me say thank you. I feel like PCS is such again, it can be a very isolating journey, especially someone could have a concussion like months ago and then only start to know symptoms now and be
Yes.
wondering where it's all coming from. So I think just having you as a resource and having all these podcasts, I
Yes.
listened to a few this last couple of weeks, and it's amazing the experts that you bring on here that are so specific in who they help. So I think thank you for first off having such a
Thank
wonderful
you.
platform.
Thanks.
Um, you can find me on Instagram at Coach Alyssa Chang, and that's the platform I predominantly use for social media, where I just share like practical science. A lot of it's really centered on what we talked about today, like creating a lot of normalcy with like your body and your symptoms, and like you make sense essentially, and then rooting it all back into the nervous system lens. I also offer group programs. I just revamped one of my 6 week coaching programs, so that's going to be available for people to register in the next couple months. I work with clients online, as we mentioned, in person or online, and I do have a free masterclass for anyone that is interested to just learn a little bit more about this nervous system approach and how I teach it, how I work through it. I share client case studies just to give more context around like the possibility of like truly changing where you're at and getting the relief that you're craving. But yeah, those are like the
Awesome.
areas.
How can they find the masterclass if
The
people are interested in
masterclass,
that?
I can give you a link that you can link at the bottom, but also on my website, so coachalissachang.com. Um, it'll be right on my homepage, but I also have like some separate links I can send you.
Perfect. Okay, yeah, we will put all of that in the show notes. Thank you again. This was a great
Yeah.
conversation. I knew it would be fun, and it was. So thanks again, and have a fantastic day.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you listened in today. I hope you have gained some helpful insights and inspiration regarding dealing with and recovering from concussions. My goal is to create more awareness and education about concussions and the fact that there is so much that can be done to improve life after someone has had one. Help me spread the message by liking, commenting, rating, and subscribing to this podcast, and share it with others who would benefit from hearing it. There are more resources available on my website. And again, if you or someone you love would benefit from concussion coaching, sign up for a free consultation using the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Thank you. See you next time, and take good care of that amazing brain of yours.